Do you know that you can go to jail for just talking about stocks if you tell someone about private information about a company that's not publicly disclosed? And you can also go to jail for what might seem to some as a very small manipulation in accounting and financial data reporting. And you can actually spend more time in jail for what I'm about to discuss than you can for manslaughter or accidentally killing somebody with your car. And I worry about some of my retail investor heroes on Reddit when it comes to GameStop and AMC. I worry not about past, but potential future because I care. I do. And so I want to help you stay out of trouble. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I really want to help you before any issues might arise with any of you or us trading online. Because I think the SEC and the FBI is going to go after retail investors after going after hedge funds as well. And I care. And I've been a retail investor forever. I'm an old man now. I'm like 50. I also worked at hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, etc. I've seen a lot of bad stuff. I've visited my buddies in jail. And I want to help you all not fall into the same trap. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the biggest insider trading FBI investigation in history and how I humbly helped my friend that was arrested by the FBI. Okay, so again, this is the biggest insider trading event in history. I really do pride myself on teaching my students based on real life practical situations and never based on theory. And what I'll also do is I'll talk about the television show Billions and how incredibly accurate it is when it comes to stock market fraud. And everything I say and do is with love in my heart to humbly try to help to make sure that my students never get into trouble by accidentally breaking the laws when it comes to insider trading. Because nobody teaches us this stuff. And the people that work at these big hedge funds and investment banks like Goldman Sachs, they all take exams before they can do any client work or investing. And they know about the insider trading laws. But my students might not know about this because where do you read about this stuff? It's not taught to us. It should be taught to everybody before they open a brokerage account. And I remember many, many years ago, in the summer or late summer of 2000, I went through the Goldman Sachs training program. And what they told me was, welcome to Goldman Sachs. You have more of an ability to destroy value than add value to this firm. Please don't do anything that's going to get the firm on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And then they fingerprinted all of us. Welcome to Goldman Sachs, right? And that was actually the right call in hindsight because they put the fear of God into us, not to break the laws and whatnot. All right. So a lot of us retail investors trade stocks, and we don't realize that we can go to jail if we manipulate certain meme stocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how all this works and how to stay out of trouble. Okay. So I'm going to talk about real life situations of a billionaire I met when I worked in the hedge fund industry that's in jail right now. He gets out next month. I'll tell you who he is in a minute. I'll also talk about a prominent CEO of a massive software company called Computer Associates, who I also met a number of times and seemed like a good guy. He went to jail for 12 years. I'll explain exactly what all these people did and how to keep yourself out of trouble. I'll also discuss and show you how I visited several jails. I'll take you inside the jails. And why I showed compassion for my friends who aren't billionaires that are in jail that violated insider trading rules. Because what happens is when you get arrested on Wall Street, you find out who your real friends are, and guilty, always. And what I'll do is I'll show you again the insides of the jails I visited. And I have students actually all over the world that have spent time in jail for other reasons, and we all deserve a second chance. Then what I'll do is I'm going to wrap up this topic with how you can volunteer in the prison system, okay, if you want to help people that maybe had a deadbeat father and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yes, I do think that there are far too many people that are unfairly in prison, and God bless you, Kim Kardashian, for helping to make prison reform reality. A reality, yeah. She's in law school now working on that. So in order to learn the insider trading rules, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a case study of a massive hedge fund that was a criminal institution called Galleon. And when I worked at Goldman Sachs in New York City, Galleon was our second largest client of Goldman Sachs' equities division. The largest was a mutual fund we weren't allowed to talk about that rhymes with Fidelity. They're so powerful. And actually, when it comes to Fidelity, and this is public knowledge, when it comes to Fidelity with IPOs, right, and Fidelity's a big mutual fund in Boston, they're so powerful that, and they pay so much money in commissions to trading floors, that in every IPO, Fidelity, it's an unwritten rule, they get twice as many shares in the IPO than the second largest institutional investor. And so when I worked at Goldman, the second largest institutional investor, a hedge fund client, was actually Galleon. Now, Goldman Sachs did not do anything wrong with the Galleon scandal I'm about to talk about. So here's what happened. So there's this guy named Raj Rotman that ran a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund called Galleon. And I actually had dinner with him once at a Deutsche Bank conference in Miami in 2004, and we shared a cab ride home after that as well. But there was something about him, an arrogance. And for him, it seemed like he was giving off the impression that it's so easy to make money and how all of his employees are like disposable, pawns in a chess game. So the way that hedge funds actually work is before the markets open in the morning, they have what's called a morning meeting. And in this morning meeting, what they do is they discuss news that might make stocks go up or down. Okay, and this is a little excerpt from a course of mine called the Complete Financial Analyst course, which I'm going to give to all of you for free later on today on the call. Remind me, please, because I've had issues with today's call and I feel really bad from a customer service perspective. So what happens is there are morning meetings every day before the market opens, where what happens is they discuss news that might make stocks go up or down. I'm trying to bring you inside the mind of hedge funds and how it all works. Okay, so in the morning meeting, you have analysts that cover different sectors like software stocks, semiconductor stocks, etc. And Raj Rotman from Galleon, who gets out of jail next month after 10 years in jail, Raj Rotman would literally sit in the morning meeting like he's the dude from the movie Gladiator, and he'd let his analysts argue with each other in the pit in front of him, and then he'd call out who the winner is. And the winner was often the one that did illegal things. Now, I still have very good friends that used to work at Galleon. All right. So what Raj Rotman would do is he would literally ask his semiconductor analyst, this is an Intel chip, he would ask his semiconductor analyst, how's the quarter going on Intel, ticker INTC? And the analyst would reply, Raj, as I mentioned in yesterday's morning meeting, Intel is tracking a bit ahead of plan for the quarter. Then Raj would interrupt and say, no. How is the quarter going as of this morning? And that was a real conversation from a morning meeting at Galleon. And what is illegal about that is that no investor is ever allowed to know anything about how business is tracking at a publicly traded company until the company publicly discloses the information through a press release or through a publicly accessible source like a webcast like this one here, or through a quote in the media. So if you're lining up at Starbucks one day, waiting for your coffee, and some dude comes in front of you that works for Intel, for example, and they say to their colleague in front of you, gosh, things are awful this quarter and we're going to miss earnings. And then if you take that information and you trade on it, or even if you tell someone that trades on that, you can go to jail because that information is not publicly disclosed. And Martha Stewart, actually, this is crazy, but Martha Stewart spent time in jail because of insider trading, 2 years to be exact. And the real story, apparently, is that when the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, when the SEC was investigating her, she was not the nicest person to the SEC, which may have caused the SEC to be not as lenient. I'll leave it at that. Let's get back to Galleon. So I had a friend who was the software analyst at Galleon. And he said to me, Chris, things are so stressful here because when software companies like Cognos at the time reports earnings, the traders yell at me and say, how are bookings in the quarter? And for a criminal hedge fund, and you make $1 million bonus, and you live in, let's say, New York City, and you spend 30 grand per year for your kids for preschool, which is true, they do, then you have a very, very high standard of living. And you can't maintain that high standard of living unless you make a fortune every year. Now, I'm a capitalist for sure, but money certainly can be the root of all evil. And this causes many people, but not certainly all hedge fund employees, but many, to violate insider trading rules. Now, with Galleon, it was so ridiculous that Raj Rajratman, who is like many billionaires in finance, thinks he's above the law. What Raj did was he had his employees literally give bags of money to people that worked in Silicon Valley here as bribes to tell them, how's the quarter going? Obviously illegal. Then Raj would literally ask his friends that were the CEOs of big companies like McKinsey to give him insider information. And this resulted in the CEO of consulting giant McKinsey being fired. And I don't know why McKinsey gets a hall pass on this, because they also advised Enron, ticker was ENE. It was a big disaster back in 2002. And Arthur Andersen was shut down. And they advised as well. But McKinsey walked away. And I think one of the reasons is because McKinsey is a little bit different from other consulting firms. And I see that there are questions about consulting firms today. I'll get to them soon. But McKinsey is a little bit different from other consulting firms because what they do is they give you advice, right? They want to, and then they leave. Versus many other consulting firms like Accenture, where I used to proudly work, where they stay on the client site and see it through. Okay. So when I worked at Goldman Sachs, my best friend there, a guy named Gautam Shankar, and I were in the associate training program way back in 2000. And then what happened was Gautam left Goldman Sachs post 9/11, as at that point in time, many companies, they cut into muscle and not into fat when overfiring, when the economy pulled back. So I lost touch with Gautam, and he actually worked at a firm as a trader that did business with Galleon. And I'll never forget this. He called me in 2011 when I was running my hedge fund, and we reconnected after many years. And he told me he got arrested and that he needed my help. I said, of course, buddy, anything you want. And he told me what happened was he was on the phone one day with a Galleon employee on the other line. Gautam worked at another hedge fund. And Gautam was eating lunch. Okay, he was eating lunch one day while kind of half listening to the phone call. And he was distracted by his 4 computer monitors that a lot of traders have in front of them. Now, on the phone, the Galleon employee passed on information to Gautam. And Gautam didn't really remember perfectly what happened. And he took another call and passed on that information from the Galleon employee to the person on the other call. And the FBI was listening to the call. And they promptly arrested my very good friend. And so Gautam called me in 2011. He said, Chris, I have a newborn and a wonderful wife, and the government might put me in jail. He told me it was a media frenzy. And when he was walking with his lawyer to the trial, his lawyer would told him to, no matter what, do not make eye contact with the media photographers. I'll show you in a second, because this can show defiance, right? And so let me actually show you here really, really quickly. So let me do a search here on Gautam Shankar. Great guy. If you guys get to meet him one day, you'll love him. And let me go here to images. And I'm going to show you myself in the news in a second as well. Let me go here just to Gautam. Probably a common name. Here he is here. Yeah. So here he is. And that's his lawyer on the left. This is Gautam. He's looking down. This was in the New York Daily News. Not looking at the camera, not looking at the camera. They caught him once, actually, looking at the camera. Right here. Yeah. And they tell you, look down. So it looks humbling. So I said, of course. He said, my lawyer wants my friends to write letters to the judge to talk about my character. And I said, you got it, brother. I love you, man. So what I did was I wrote a letter and I poured my heart into it. Okay. And when you do this with federal investigations, the letter is in the public domain. And I got tons of Bloomberg messages from friends in the hedge fund industry when they saw the letter and calls. People were saying to me, Chris, why would you do that? Why would you help him? What's the upside? And I said, the upside is compassion, and everybody deserves a second chance. And my favorite students of mine are the ones that are poor, smart, and hungry, and often those that have had a setback in life. And I hope as we discuss this case that you're humbly learning the insider trading rules. Now, let me proudly share with you my name alongside Gotham's in that Bloomberg article when I was quoting standing up for him. So let me show you that. And you guys can do a search as well and see me alongside Gotham here. So let's go to Gotham, Shankar, Chris, Haroun. So here's a Bloomberg article here. Galleon insider figure gets probation after leniency bet. Okay, and you can read this if you want to as well. If I search for my name here, I wrote here. Let me make it bigger so y'all can see it. Gotham and I were in the training program together at Goldman Sachs. If I could summarize his character in 5 words, it would be as follows: ethical, kind, minimalist, selfless, and generous. He's a great guy, and I proudly stood up for him there. Now, the FBI was fair with him because he helped them, which was the right call. Something that you think there's a tiny chance that this information you hear is not publicly disclosed, then please don't trade about that stock or even talk about that stock. Number 2, if your boss or anyone on the phone tries to influence you to break the law when it comes to insider information, I want you to say this: I don't feel comfortable with this conversation. And I've used that on more than one occasion. I'll never tell you which hedge fund it was. Then what you do next is you report the conversation to your compliance department if one exists in your firm. And you will not get fired for doing that. And if you do, then the firm could get shut down or materially fined. And if you work at a finance company, then they will promptly put the stock you had information on what's called the restricted list for at least a month, meaning nobody in the department or potentially firm-wide can transact in that company. The alternative of not doing this is that it will hurt your career much more in the long run. If you work in a non-finance firm, I should say also, please talk to your boss or human resources if you hear something or accidentally say something. And as Warren Buffett said, it takes 30 years to build a reputation and only 30 seconds to ruin it. And one of the only things that you take with you from job to job or career to career is your reputation. And Intel, of course, to the extent that when I visited Intel, when I worked in the hedge fund industry, they gave me this badge here, right? Everything is tracked now. And it says visitor escort required. I'm not going to make a bad joke about that, but I'm so tempted to do it. Okay. All right. So you got to be careful about insider information. Never share anything with anybody that you think might be insider information related. Now, I visited another friend of mine in jail who was arrested by the FBI for insider trading. Good guy. Here's what the jail actually looks like on the inside. Okay, so this is a 5-hour drive from where I live right now. It's called the Taft Correctional Facility. And it's silly, but people actually call white-collar crime jails Club Fed. It's not maximum security. And what happens at these jails is the inmates can walk around even in the parking lots, and they wear colors that we as visitors aren't allowed to wear. You know, it's kind of Club Fed is kind of like a low-end Ramada. Now, billionaire Raj Rotman was sentenced to jail for 11 years. He gets out in July next month. If you're watching the replay, the year is 2021. So why is it that many billionaire hedge funds get into trouble? I mean, they're already billionaires. Why break the law? And the reason is because many, but not all of them, but many of them become billionaires by breaking the law. You know, once a cheater, always a cheater. Now, I'm definitely a capitalist, but I do think our legal system is far too lenient when it comes to certain Wall Street billionaires. You know, quite often these billionaires, many of which I've met, quite often these billionaires protect themselves by having their army of analysts around them do the dirty work of finding insider information. And these billionaires have all of their inbound and outbound emails checked by a moat or an army of lawyers so that they're protected. And so you need to tell them, you know, if you're a pawn of an analyst, if you work for them, you need to tell them, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. because they will sacrifice you in a heartbeat. Okay, now, not all hedge fund billionaires are corrupt, but lots of them are. And many of them donate a lot of money to politicians, which gives them a get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, I'm proud to say I have a get-into-jail-free card to help those unfairly imprisoned. Now, when I worked in the hedge fund industry, I was always very, very ethical. And did it potentially hurt my earnings? Probably. But I remember times when friends of mine in the hedge fund industry would ask me questions in a certain way, and I knew for sure they were being recorded. So what I'll do is I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to answer questions about that topic if you're interested. Separately, let's talk about accounting and finance crimes. I also worked at a very big hedge fund years ago that was very ethical, called Citadel. And their compliance department was off the charts. It was awesome. And I'm proud that I worked there. But when I worked there, the company hired former CIA and FBI veterans to teach us how to tell if a CEO is lying. The answer is when they move their lips. Sorry, that was a bad joke. But they hired FBI and CIA, former FBI and CIA veterans to teach us how to tell if a CEO is lying. And the case study that we did during that training session was we watched interviews of the former CEO of Computer Associates named Sanjay Gupta. And I had dinner with Sanjay years ago, and I thought he was a good guy. However, by watching the interviews, you could tell he was lying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what the former FBI and CIA veterans taught me on how to tell years in jail. He actually got out in 2017. So the way it works is when companies report earnings, they report them quarterly to investors. And each quarter, of course, has 90 days. And if the company thinks that they're going to miss revenue targets for the quarter before it ends, then they have all their salespeople work tremendously hard to see if they can close business fast. Now, this next thing I'm going to tell you is fascinating. Many hedge funds rent satellites, and they rent these satellites to count cars in the parking lots of publicly traded companies in the last couple of days of each quarter, especially if it's a weekend. Because if there's a large number of cars in the parking lot, this could indicate that the company is going to potentially miss their revenue targets. And companies more often than not, companies more often than not can make their earnings targets, but they can miss revenue targets easily because what the CFO can do is the CFO can suspend travel for the last week of a quarter in order to manage earnings, right, to save money. And that is ethical. It happens all the time. What is unethical and criminal is if one day after the quarter ends, if the CFO or salespeople change the date on the receipts from the first day of next quarter to the last day of the previous quarter. Okay, and this is what Sanjay Gupta from Computer Associates did, and that's why he went to jail. And we used to always joke on Wall Street when I was short Computer Associates that the company has 35 days in the last month of each quarter. So here are ways to tell if someone is lying. Okay, these are rules that former FBI and CIA veterans taught me. Now, what I'm about to tell you, you need to have at least 2 of these 4 to be correct to maybe think someone is lying. Maybe. Okay. That's a big thing of water, right? All right, so here's the first one. If somebody breaks eye contact with you when they're answering a question, okay? So I look down sometimes, it's just my demeanor. But if you ask somebody an answer to a yes or no question and they look away as they answer it, there is a chance they may be lying. Okay, that's just 1 of 4. You need at least 2 of 4 to be correct to maybe assume somebody's lying. Okay. The second thing is they touch their face, more often than usual. Okay, that could be a reason that they're trying to cover something up. Like people do this sometimes too over their mouth. It's subconscious, but it's human nature. The third thing of 4 is they ramble like crazy. Okay, they ramble like crazy when answering a question, like asking a kid, "Did you take that cookie from the cookie jar?" No, how could I? I mean, the ladder to get to the cookie jar is over there, and it's kind of heavy. I carried it earlier. It's kind of heavy. There's no way I could figure that out. You get it. And the last thing, the fourth thing to tell way to tell if somebody is lying is if they start shaking their foot or their hand. Okay, so it could be because they had too much caffeine. I don't know, but that's what a lie detector test does, right? Remember the movie Meet the Parents with Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller, right? So they attach it to you to see if you're lying. Yeah. Now, before I talk about the TV show Billions and its accuracy, I want to talk about another prison that I visited many times to help poor 20-something-year-old men that have deadbeat fathers. And maybe they were caught doing something at the wrong time, which, to be honest, could have been me easily. I don't think there's such thing as a deadbeat mother. So this prison that I visit a lot, it's right here by Oracle's headquarters in Redwood City. It's called the McGuire Correctional Facility, and it's a more secure prison than Club Fed. And I volunteered there to help, as everybody deserves a second chance, and too many people are unfairly imprisoned. And again, God bless Kim Kardashian for working on prison reform. So what I did was I got the police department to do a thorough background check on me through the St. Vincent de Paul charity. And when you visit, you have to go through many security checks, of course, with cameras and multiple doors. And what I would do is I would talk to inmates that did not be in jail. And one dude actually said he was in jail for selling marijuana, which of course is legal now. And he told me this. He said, if you get caught selling weed in San Francisco, all you get is a slap on the wrist. But because he sold marijuana on federal property in San Francisco, in a very small part of the city called the Presidio, where George Lucas and Peter Thiel have offices, because he sold weed on that federal property, the Presidio in San Francisco, he actually is in jail for 10 years, which is certainly not fair. And so I volunteered at the McGuire Correctional Facility, and it actually looks like this on the inside. And I did it on Sundays. And this is not a religious thing at all, but I used to be terrified of public speaking. And you need to always run to your fears in business, because your competition also has the same fears, I promise you, and they'll run away from it. You got to run to your fears and embrace it. And so when it comes to public speaking, I'd rather die than give a speech. It's the way I used to be. But one Sunday I was in the prison system, and usually there's a priest that goes in with you. And the priest wasn't there that one Sunday. Okay. And the way it works is when you go into the prison system through a not-for-profit, and there's many charities, different religions, etc., religious institutions where you can get in. But what happens is on a Sunday, there's a church service, right? And I'll never forget this because the priest wasn't there, right? And so what I did was I went into one of these rooms here. You could see it actually here, one of these smaller rooms through a door there. And I was given a pamphlet and I was supposed to read it, right? That's it. And I was so scared, man. I was standing up there and there were 30 inmates in that room in orange jumpsuits, and they had their arms crossed, right? It was terrifying. And some of them had tattoos saying "F you" right here. It was nutty. So they're looking at they're like, who the hell are you? And so I was reading the pamphlet. And what happens in church and all religious institutions is the priest, rabbi, whatever, reads something from the text, right? The New Testament in this case. And then after the priest reads it, the priest gives this speech. And the priest has all week long to prepare for this. I didn't have any time to prepare for it. So I read from the gospel. It was a passage about hope and faith and confidence. And I had to give this speech about that. I was terrified, dude. And when you're up there and your knees are shaking, nobody sees your knees shaking. Nobody sees that you're nervous. You only feel it. I promise you. And so I was supposed to give a speech. And so I just kind of winged it. And what I said kind of changed my life because it helped me conquer my fear of public speaking. And so, and dude, if you want to learn public speaking, like the scariest place to do it is a prison system. And so I said this to the inmates. They're all sitting there like this. I said, do you believe in God? And a bunch of them said, yeah. And I said, does God believe in you? And they said, yes. And I said, well, if you don't believe in yourself, then you might have to question your faith. And at that point, the arms uncrossed and people are like, huh. Yeah. And so for me, that was the turning point in my life when it comes to public speaking. Run to your fears and condition yourself to enjoy your fears. Okay, if you're scared of accounting, run towards it. Take my courses. You can get don't pay for it though. I'm going to give you the complete financial analyst training course for free later today during this session. Take my courses, learn about accounting, learn to enjoy that stuff. Run to take public speeches every now and then. I can't speech properly today. Yeah. And eventually you can condition yourself to enjoy it because your competition won't. Okay, so now that we know what these prisons look like and how to visit your friends to help others that are unfairly put in the prison system, what I want to do is I want to now talk about the TV show Billions and how incredibly accurate it is. And one of the writers and creators is this brilliant dude named Andrew Ross Sorkin. Okay, and he was actually one of the creators of Billions. He's an amazing journalist. He does his work, but he also made the best business movie ever about what happened in 2008 called Too Big to Fail. Watch that movie, please. And the billionaire in the show Billions, played by Brody from Homeland, who's British in real life, the billionaire in the show Billions is called Bobby Axelrod. And many of the episodes actually in Billions chronicle real criminal situations that billionaire hedge fund managers committed crimes. And in the hedge fund community, we all know who the real life criminals are and what situations are they're talking about. The show is so accurate to the extent that what the analysts wear is accurate too. Usually on Wall Street, or at least these hedge funds, people wear these coats, these things that look like this. If you watch it, it's actually a good way to understand what not to do in finance. Kind of like the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas from '87, or The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, when it comes to the psychiatrist in the show, I'm going to get hot with this. Let me take it off. When it comes to the psychiatrist in the show, it's actually accurate, right? Because many hedge funds actually have psychiatrists on site. And I worked for a hedge fund in New York City where they had one on site every now and then called Kingdon Capital. But this actress here, Maggie Siff, she plays a psychiatrist. And she actually used to work at a hedge fund. And Tony Robbins trained her on how to play that psychiatrist role. And the show is incredibly well-researched and multidimensional as well. Now, in terms of Paul Giamatti, who's I think his dad was the head of baseball, Bartlett Giamatti, passed away, God bless him. But in terms of Paul Giamatti as the district attorney in the show Billions, his character is a bit extreme in the show. But his character is actually based on Preet Bharara for the ethical stuff and Elliot Spitzer for the unethical stuff. And Preet Bharara is actually one of my heroes. He's one of my heroes because he prosecuted and investigated the mafia, Al-Qaeda, and Russia money launderers actually back in 2013. In fact, he's not allowed to enter Russia anymore. He also prosecuted about 100 Wall Street criminals, including Raj Ratnam. And I actually wish that Preet was still working for the government, as there are a lot of criminal bankers that got bailed out in 2008 that gave themselves record bonuses in 2010, while many Americans lost their houses. Not fair. And I'd love to see a massive tax on the banks that got bailed out with the use of proceeds to help Americans that lost their houses in 2008. Now, Preet won 85 Wall Street insider trading convictions in a row. It's unbelievable. And he was so passionate and so good at his job that maybe that's the reason he's no longer in that position. The last thing I'll say is that if you transact in stocks, and if you think there's a small chance you could get into trouble by driving up or down certain stocks like GameStop or AMC, please be careful. Because I think the SEC and the FBI will be looking into stock manipulation, regardless of if you work at a hedge fund or you're one of my retail hero investors on Reddit. Thanks. All right. We're all good here. Give me 1 second, guys. I want to talk about activist invest. And everything I teach, I try to do it based on my real life experience and not based on theory. And I want you to learn from me and my mistakes too. Yeah. And if you work for a schmuck and you're frustrated, it's okay because you're learning how not to manage people. And that will motivate you to maybe get out and get a better job, which you can get using my complete job course, which I'm giving away for free today as well. All right. Love my coffee. Let's do a quick case study on activist investors by talking about what activist investors look for when making an investment. And then what we'll do is we're going to look at a current investment by an activist investor called Elliott Management in a company called Dropbox, which many of you know. So let me start with why you should never, ever, ever invest in a company that is transitioning from growth to value. Because that period in between growth and value, which I'll explain in a second, that period in between growth and value is investment purgatory. And stocks that are stuck in investment purgatory, transitioning from growth to value, are basically stuck there forever, unless an activist investor like Carl Icahn speeds up the transition. Now, let me talk about Carl Icahn and a case study in a company I invested in for years called eBay, which y'all know. So Carl Icahn, he's an activist investor. And what happened was eBay wasn't owned by many investors. And the reason was as follows. So there's growth investors and value investors. You're usually one or the other. Okay, so growth investors like to buy stocks that are expensive today and are growing fast. Okay. Value investors like to buy stocks that are cheap and not growing fast. Now, every growth company eventually becomes a value company, right? Because of the law of large numbers. Big companies just can't grow materially. It is what it is. And so what happens is when growth slows, the growth investors sell the stock. And value investors don't like it yet because it's not cheap enough. And so it takes usually a decade, right, to transition to become a value investment. And you never want to invest in a company that's in transition because the likelihood that a growth or a value investor buys it this year, this month, this quarter, whatever, is quite low. Okay, never do that. Never do that. Now, what can make a stock go from growth to value much faster, right? What could be the catalyst to shrink this purgatory range here? What can cause a stock to actually go from growth to value fast is if a value investor or if an activist investor buys the shares and gets on the board. And so this is what Carl Icahn did. So Carl Icahn, he runs this big activist investment firm. And he bought a massive position in eBay years ago. And what happens is when you buy a big position in a company, you can join the board and then you can fire executives, which is what he did to John Donahoe, who's the CEO. Great guy. I met him. He used to work at Bain. Nice guy, really tall. So Carl Icahn got on the board of eBay. And he forced the company to split into two companies to unlock shareholder value. Why? Because at that time, about 10 years ago or whatever it was, at that time, eBay was basically two companies. They had PayPal and they had eBay. And value investors love eBay because it's got great revenue visibility, and when we're in a recession, people sell more stuff as well, but it's not growing. And growth investors love PayPal because PayPal was growing very, very fast. And so what Icahn did as an activist investor is he split eBay into two, okay? eBay and PayPal. And the market cap of those two companies combined, once PayPal got spun off, was way, way higher than eBay alone. So another reason activist investors try to bully a management team into making the stock price go up is if the company has had poor execution and the stock has underperformed, which is what happened with Twitter. Let's talk about activist investment firm Elliott Management and their interest in Dropbox. So if we look at a chart of ticker DBX, which is Dropbox, you'll see the stock really hasn't gone anywhere since. All right, so if we look at a chart of Dropbox, which is going to go up a lot more. If we look at a chart of Dropbox, so the company went public back here in 2018, okay? And the stock, until recently, until Elliott Management announced their stake, the stock was actually below the IPO price, which is ludicrous because all other tech stocks are at all-time highs now. In fact, the price of Dropbox is now only slightly above the IPO price today because Elliott Management disclosed a 10% stake in the company. And when you own many shares in a company, what you can do is you can join the board and recommend changes, and even on occasion, fire members of the management team. So Elliott can even influence the board of Dropbox to sell the company. Now, if Salesforce, ticker CRM, bought Slack recently for close to $30 billion, then a firm buying Dropbox, ticker Dropbox, for less than $15 billion could easily take place, easily. And I'm actually shocked that Dropbox has not yet been acquired, especially since many tech stocks are overvalued and large tech companies can actually use their shares as overvalued currency to buy the company like Dropbox. And this is what happened actually with AOL when they bought Time Warner in late 1999. Now, to be intellectually honest and objective though, Dropbox growth is anemic, all things considered, at only 12% revenue growth. And maybe storage is a commodity. And I actually have a corporate license for Dropbox for all of my employees, and I've had it for 5 years. And I've not seen any innovation in the product at all over the past 5 years. Now, Dropbox, the company itself, understands its issues. And earlier this year, what they did was they let 11% of their workforce go, and they're doing a $1 billion buyback, right? Which is, it doesn't usually happen when a company goes public within the first couple of years post-IPO. But it's strange for a growth stock to be cutting expenses. And it actually looks like it's between growth and value now, and maybe soon to enter investment purgatory. And so I really do believe that the company, Dropbox, is being incredibly mismanaged, hence the investment by activist firm Elliott Management. And Elliott Management has an amazing track record in investing in tech and software companies. And I invested alongside Elliott for years when I worked in the hedge fund industry, when they invested in CompuWare, and also when they invested in troubled Linux and networking company Novell, and many others as well. They're excellent at enhancing shareholder value when it comes to software and internet investors, and I think their investment in Dropbox makes a lot of sense. And this deal reminds me a lot of when Elliott invested in Twitter a couple of years ago and they made a fortune. Let's talk about an introduction to options, futures, derivatives, and commodities. Plus, I want to talk about why oil is at a 2-year high. I screwed this up, man. I'm not supposed to have that slide there. Let me go back here just to me. I'm going to be using a lot of props here, and I'm going to make a fool of myself. Okay. Let's talk about an introduction to options, futures, derivatives, and commodities. And I also want to talk about why oil is at a 2-year high and why the price of oil in the futures market went negative oil in 2020. So what I'll also do is I'll briefly explain how the future market works using props as always. And what I'm about to teach you is an excerpt from my upcoming Udemy course called the Complete Options, Futures, and Derivatives course. Again, please laugh at me and not with me as I'm about to make a fool of myself for a change. Now, before we get started, if you want to experiment with transacting in options, you can open a paper account portfolio with a company called Thinkorswim. You know what I'll do actually is let me just go off script and show this to you. Okay, so Ameritrade real portfolio. See, I'm switching here to paper money. So let me log in here. Whoops. All right, give me 1 second. Yeah, so what you can do is you can open up a paper account as well. It might not work in all countries. Maybe you can look at using a VPN if you're allowed to in your country, okay? But what I'm about to show you is for educational purposes only. So right now I'm in simulated trading, okay? This is a paper portfolio here. And right here, and I'm doing this for my course coming up soon, I have Coca-Cola options, okay? And you can actually look at Coca-Cola options. You can see which calls are in the money and which puts are in the money. A call and a put is the option for you to be able to buy a certain number of shares after a limited amount of time. Calls means you bet a small amount of money the stock's going to go up. The worst you can lose is this much money. Puts is when you bet this much money that the stock's going to go down. Worst case, you lose this much money. Don't short stocks because your losses can be infinite. Okay. All right. Now, options, as the word states, is optional. Meaning, if you buy an option, you have the option, it's optional, you have the option of executing it. Futures markets are similar, but unlike options, you must execute the contract, okay? And people have been trading futures contracts on commodities like corn, wheat, and even tulip bulbs for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so options and futures are part of a larger market called, it's fun doing this live, of the global stock market is close to $100 trillion. But most people invest in stocks to make money. But the size of the options, futures, derivatives market in general is massive. Okay, it's over $600 trillion. It's so big, and it affects many aspects of our lives. And it can make us a lot of money like stocks do, or it can protect us from losing money, which is one of the reasons why the global derivatives market is 6 times bigger than the size of the global stock market. In fact, if you added up the value of all the securities that all derivative contracts are based on, then the value is bigger than the GDP, meaning revenue of every country in the world. In fact, if you go back to 2008, when the whole world was within 24 hours of bank machines not working, it was because of derivatives. And at that time, I remember well, Warren Buffett saying that derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction. So let's go on a journey together, okay? Let's go on a journey together back in time to 1896. And what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Farmer McFly. And let me just take off my jacket here. It'll be fun doing this live, see if I mess this up. I want to introduce you to Farmer McFly. All right. And for those of you who took my complete cryptocurrency course, you'll remember Farmer McFly. He's making another appearance in my complete options derivatives course. Look at me buying time. And my complete options derivatives course will come out later this year. Let's set the tone. Alexa, play Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Vivaldi, Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi on Amazon Music.
Top of the morning to ya. My name is Farmer Marty McFly. I have all these bushels of wheat here, and I want to sell them. And I got to put this wheat on a train, and it takes me 7 days on a train to arrive at the market in Chicago, where somebody will buy the wheat. And I know the price. The price of wheat changes. Okay, lose the accent, Haroun. Here we go. The price of wheat changes all the time. And I, Farmer McFly, I'm worried that if I ship this wheat and somebody buys it in 7 days when it arrives off the train, I'm worried that in 7 days, if the price of wheat falls below $1, then I won't be able to keep my farm. So I need to protect my farm and my family, and I'm not sure what to do. My name is John Pierpont Morgan. My friends call me JP Morgan, but you can call me Mr. Morgan. And I can help you. I came here in the nick of time. I can help you as I will buy your wheat. I will buy your wheat now for $1, even though it won't arrive on the train when you ship it for 7 days in the future. And the futures and derivatives markets are all about time. All right, I'm just going to do hats now. Mr. Morgan, Farmer McFly. Mr. Morgan, I cannot thank you enough. May you live as long as you want and never want as long as you live. Now, please tell me, what happens if the price of this wheat falls to 50 cents from $1 in 7 days? JP Morgan? Well, you still get $1 no matter what happens. If it drops below $1, I bite the bullet and I take the loss. But if the price rises way above $1, you still only get $1 and I get a handsome profit. Gee whiz. Well, from a risk-reward perspective, if the price falls below $1, me farm will go belly up and I will go broke. But at $1, I have the insurance in place to stay in business. So as a seller of wheat, I am happy, farmer, I'm happy to sign the $1 contract. All right. Alexa, stop. Gee whiz is right. Okay, we're back in the present now. Now, who would buy this wheat? Well, the other side of the futures transaction are usually big companies that need wheat to make their products. For example, General Mills, ticker GIS, they need to buy wheat in order to make their cereal Wheaties. Okay, so they're the counterparty or the other side of that trade. Okay, they want to lock in a price as well. And the Olympic hero on this box is Michael Phelps, who won 65 gold medals in the Olympics. Now, just like with wheat, there are markets where you can buy and sell based on the future price of anything like gold, for example, like his gold medals. Now, trade the future prices of oranges as well, right? And that's actually how Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd made a fortune in the classic movie about futures called Trading Places. Now, there are ways to buy and sell the future price of almost anything, including hemp now and cannabis, which I don't partake in. And here, interesting side note, actually, General Mills no longer has Michael Phelps on the cover of Wheaties because he was caught smoking weed. So if I worked in the marketing department at Wheaties, I guess I might change the cover of this box to, winners don't do drugs. Champions do. Okay, sorry. It's been a while since I put dad humor on this call. Okay, we're done with the Wheaties for now. So Farmer McFly's wheat contract is part of the Chicago Mercantile Group. Okay, and that actually, the CME, I should say, Farmer McFly's wheat contract is part of the CME Group, which stands for the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And think of the CME like it's a combination of the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. And the CME, or Chicago Mercantile Exchange, is enormous. And I humbly think that it has a near monopoly. It's like if Walmart and Amazon merged and controlled the options, futures, and derivatives markets. Now, if we want to find out what the price of wheat is and futures in general, what we do is we actually go to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange's website. So let's go there really, really quickly. So you go to CME. Whoops. Tough doing these things live, man. Okay, CMEgroup.com. And here at the CME, what you can do is you could scroll down and you can get futures and prices on wheat and all different products, right? So it's kind of tough to see, but right here you've got a soybean, you've got cattle, and these are live, these are trading right now. You've got corn futures, crude oil, equities as well. Okay, so it's a massive business, 6 times bigger than the stock market even. Okay, but there's actually one exchange in the world, one future exchange that trades more every day in terms of options and futures volume, which is the National Stock Exchange of India in Mumbai. Now, what I just explained to you with Farmer McFly was a futures contract, which is kind of like an insurance policy. Okay, the insurance policy protects the farmer from changes in the price of wheat. And that futures contract gave the farmer peace of mind, knowing that if the price of wheat dropped, he'd still be able to take care of his farm and his family. So that wheat futures contract was kind of like an insurance policy for him. And this is actually not a new concept because thousands of years ago, in what is now Italy, olive oil companies also did the same thing. And in the 1600s in Holland, when tulip bulb prices were rising, locked in prices to sell tulip bulbs at certain prices or higher prices in the future, just in case the price dropped. Okay, and there have been so many investment bubbles over the past 1,000 years. And options and futures and derivatives, financial instruments have actually made people a fortune or helped them to lock in prices in order to protect their investments. Let's talk about another example now. We're going to do another case study, but this time we're going to go back to 2003. We're going to go to Texas. Alexa, play Don't Mess with Texas.
Here's Don't Mess with Texas by Bradley Bannon.
All right, let's do this. Howdy. My name is Alexa, stop. Howdy. My name is Gary. I gotta wear a cowboy hat here because I'm in Texas. My name is Gary Kelly, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at a Texas-based airline company called Southwest, ticker LUV. Everything's bigger in Texas. Everything. Even this shirt. It's huge. Now, we at Southwest Airlines, ticker LUV, we love to hedge our risk when thinking about the future price of our expenses in general. And back in 1972, the year that Professor Chris Haroun was born, we almost went bankrupt here at Southwest. Okay? And we had to actually sell one of our Boeing 737 airplanes so we could make payroll. And we learned the hard way that we must think about future expenses if we're going to remain in business. So today is 2003. So what do you think our biggest expenses are to run our airline? What do you think it is? It's oil. And what keeps most airlines in the red, meaning they lose money, is when the price of oil increases. Okay, so remember, we're back in 2003. I'm the CFO of Southwest. Now, over the past couple of years, we've been spending over 20% more on oil, and our ticket prices have actually slightly dropped. And so it's 2003 now, and China is growing so gosh darn fast that they keep buying more and more oil. And since I live in the great state of Texas, my oil buddies here tell me that the price of oil is going to increase from the current price of $28 to over $100 in 5 years, which is what happened. This ain't my first rodeo. I know what's going to happen. The price of oil will increase and we will go bankrupt. So how do I lock in the price of oil at a low price so that we can make a lot of money while sure enough the other airlines go belly up? Well, there's a concept called hedging. And on my cattle ranch, I have a big hedge that surrounds my property. Okay, and that hedge, airline Southwest, by hedging against a big increase in the price of oil, so we can be profitable and in the black. Bless your heart, don't mess with Texas. I sure hope this works. All right, let me get back into character now, and I'll tell you if it worked or not. All right, change the lighting a bit. All right. It worked exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. Right? It was amazing. To the extent that the CFO, Gary Kelly, eventually became the CEO. There we go. He eventually became the CEO of Southwest Airline, which rarely happens. CFOs usually don't make CEO. But you're going to love what I'm about to tell you here. Southwest made billions of dollars because their hedges, especially with their hedges, because the price of oil was well over $100 at one point in 2008, right? But remember, they were paying just under $30 for it per barrel. So how do many airlines protect themselves from an increase in the price of oil? Well, they do it by calling their friends that work at big banks like JP Morgan, and they ask their friends when they call them to structure a financial product that will give them the option to buy oil over the next couple of years or longer at a certain price. Now, unlike futures contracts, you don't have to buy oil at a certain price, okay? But you have the option to do so, okay? That's the difference between options and futures. And in my course, my upcoming course on Udemy, I'll talk about that in much more detail. Okay, so a futures contract is set in stone, as the buyer and the seller must execute the contract that we talked about with the price of wheat, for example, with Farmer McFly. With the farmer's future contract, once he signed the contract, he had to sell wheat for $1 per bucket, $1 per bucket. And JP Morgan had to buy the wheat for $1 per barrel. Options are a bit different because, as the name options implies, you have the option to buy or sell at certain prices. Now, oil is at a 2-year high. And why the heck did the price of oil in the futures market go negative for the first time in history in April of 2020? Well, the price of oil dropped one day in April of 2020, by more than 300%. Okay, this is nutty. It went from $18 to negative $38.45. Crazy. Now that, okay, and that actually was the mother of all black swan events. Oil went negative. And the reason it did go negative last year was because there were so many oil tankers sitting out there full of oil. Okay, and there's no demand for oil. And it costs a lot of money to keep these ships afloat every single. It recovered quickly in June, of course. But let me just talk about the bigger picture here. The wonderful thing about options and futures is it's all about making money based on the change in price of something in the future. Okay, or it's all about protection, meaning defense. Okay, so let me use a sports analogy. Okay, in the world of sports, we talk about offense and defense. You know, offense is scoring a touchdown or a goal or making money. Defense is about protecting yourself from somebody scoring against you. So all this stuff that I'm talking about when it comes to options, meaning futures, etc., is about either being offensive, meaning making money, or being defensive, meaning protecting your money. Okay, and that's why the market is so much bigger than the stock market. And so all this stuff, meaning options and futures and more advanced topics, which I'll talk about, like swaps, warrants, etc., in my course, they're part of a much bigger market. Okay, so they're all part, as I mentioned before, of something called derivatives. And for those of you who have taken calculus in class, this is the only time it's going to come in handy. We know are part of the bigger derivatives industry. And there's even more advanced types of derivatives that I'll talk about in my upcoming course. Again, the size of the entire derivatives market is way over $600 trillion. Okay, it's 6 times bigger than the value of all stocks in the world combined. And people use all sorts of derivative instruments when it comes to making money or protecting against losing money. Okay, and they do this with commodities, bonds, stocks, interest rates, currency fluctuations, etc. Now, on a much more serious note, derivative instruments are analyzed closely by government agencies like the FBI and the Securities and Exchange Commission to catch criminal hedge funds from profiting off of insider information. What does this mean? Well, if a hedge fund buys a lot of call options on a company, okay, and that company gets acquired by another company, it could signal to the government that the hedge fund had insider information, which of course is against the law. Also, governments analyze many organizations globally whenever somebody profits from stocks or they go down a lot, okay? Right, in size with weird events. Now, I worked at Goldman Sachs on 9/11 in New York City. It was awful. And a week or two after 9/11, when we were allowed to go back to work and the markets opened, they were in free fall, of course. And on the trading floor, I'll never forget this, a couple weeks after 9/11, okay, on the trading floor on my Bloomberg Financial Data Terminal, I entered UAL Equity OMON and AA Equity OMON, which means I looked at the options monitor OMON for 2 stocks, okay, United Airlines and American Airlines, right? UAL ticker and AA ticker. And the opposite of a call is called a put, meaning you can invest money and make money if stocks go down. And nobody talks about this, but I noticed, and it's publicly disclosed if you want to do research on it, but I noticed at that time that a few days before 9/11, the amount of put options purchased on U.S. airlines was the highest it's been in history. It's terrifying. But when it comes to derivative instruments, governments use artificial intelligence-based products to analyze who is profiting from awful events, which of course I'm happy that the government is monitoring. Now, the global derivative market impacts all of us. And it was actually one of the reasons why the world was within 24 hours of bank machines not working in 2008. And I'll explain more about this thoroughly in my upcoming course. as we build upon the basics and advanced topics of derivatives. But the macro implications of using derivative instruments affects our daily lives a lot. Now, one last thing I want to talk about from a macro, meaning bigger picture perspective, is the best damn indicator for you to know when to buy stocks. Okay, and we're going to look at a derivative instrument in a second together. It's really simple. Okay. Now, one of the many derivative markets we'll discuss in the course is the CBOE, which is the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And on the CBOE, okay, and we're going to go there in a second, is a very important ticker, which is the VIX, V-I-X, okay, which measures expectations of future volatility in the Standard & Poor's 500 index. Okay, and the Standard & Poor's 500 index, also called the S&P 500, it's basically a collection of 500 stocks that represent the U.S. markets. Okay, so I'll talk about many international markets as well, of course, in the course, not just the U.S. Now, on the CBOE, the ticker VIX measures how volatile the market expects the S&P 500 to be. And volatility is fear, right? So when people are scared, stocks go up and down a lot, very volatile. It's a fear indicator. And I love backing up the truck and buying stocks when the VIX spikes a lot. Okay, this works exceptionally well. I'm about to show you. Okay, so let me show you this. So we're going to go and we're going to look at ticker finance.yahoo.com. And I will type here VIX. Okay, great. Here it is. Oops, actually type in ticker VIX. V-I-X. Here we go. Good. All right. So let's take a look at this. And I promise you what I'm about to show you is going to make you a fortune if you do it right. And I'll explain. Okay, so the VIX was first launched back in 1990. Okay. And whenever the VIX spikes, it means there's fear. Volatility increased a lot on the S&P 500. Right. And so it's tough to see, but right here, this is around Gulf War I. Okay. And there was fear in the markets. Right here, in the late 90s, I worked at Goldman Sachs here, and I'll remember it was Federal Reserve Chairperson Ellen Greenspan unexpectedly cut rates, and the trading floor went nuts. I'll never forget it. And that was because of the Asian flu. Nothing to do with COVID, but back then there was a lot of problems with a lot of Southeast Asian countries. Okay, so the market sold off, and the VIX was high. Then it spiked again, of course, after 9/11. And then in 2008, it spiked right here. And you always buy stocks when the VIX spikes a lot. Okay, I promise you it works. It works exceptionally well. It's foolproof. That's right, for now at least. Yeah. And when the VIX spikes, I promise you, you're going to be sitting there thinking, oh my God, it's crazy. It's crazy to think I should buy stocks now because the world's ending. It's not. Things are never as bad as they seem, always. But that's when you back up the truck because nobody else is. And so the VIX spiked to 79.13 in October of 2008. And the VIX last year, if we look at it, if you looked intraday last year, it actually spiked to above 80. Let's see if I can show it here. Yeah. It spiked temporarily to 82.69. And so what you need to do is always be unemotional and back up the truck whenever the VIX spikes, no matter what. Okay. But we have to be careful when we invest. And the best investors are also very unemotional, because as Warren Buffett once said, the New York Stock Exchange is the only store in the world where consumers sell stuff when it goes on sale, meaning when the VIX is very, very high. And in my upcoming course, I'll also teach you about incredibly profitable trades that worked well for George Soros when he made $1 billion in one day. I'll also teach you about disastrous trades that ruin companies and economies, like when Nick Leeson, who's a trader in Singapore, used derivatives and bankrupted the second oldest merchant bank called Barings back in 1999. Yeah. I'll also talk about how derivatives brought the entire global financial market to near extinction in 2008. And I'll talk about how the whole world was literally within 24 hours of bank machines not working. Okay. Lots going on today. It's fun though. All right. Let's talk about how to profit from China becoming more communist. Now, for my entire life since I was a baby, the world's been moving away from the left, which is awesome. And when I was born, Nixon went to China Then when I was 17, the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. And in Russia, we had perestroika and glasnost, which led to more open markets globally. And China was slowly opening up and moving a tiny bit each year away from the terrible communism on the left. Then, with the emergence of disruptive cryptocurrencies and COVID, China's actually, unfortunately, been shifting back to the left and becoming more communist, stood in front of communist tanks and demanded more rights. And let's also not forget about those freedom heroes that were protesting in Hong Kong in 2019. And I think that the government in China could have stopped the spread of COVID a little bit faster in late 2019. But they conveniently maybe used that as an excuse to make the protesters stay at home. And Beijing even has facial recognition for hundreds of millions of its citizens. And China's new cryptocurrencies can be used to track all their citizens' spending patterns, etc., through the use of that Orwellian crypto. So with China moving towards communism again, how can we profit as global investors? We can do so by investing in Singapore, which is an incredibly well-run capitalist country that is open for business. And so I recommend looking into investing in companies in Singapore and even Singapore-based ETFs in the long run, meaning hold them for decades, as over time more companies will choose to do business in Singapore as China continues to, unfortunately, move to the left. Companies are going to vote with their wallet. Now, the last thing I'll say is we need to pressure large tech companies to not bless communism by agreeing to censorship, like Microsoft searches of my hero that stood up for human rights to fight for the liberties that Microsoft already enjoys in America. All right. This one is fun. All right. And I'll take your questions very, very soon. And thank you, everybody, for your patience at the beginning of the webcast today. We had internet issues, which I fixed. And I'm getting fiber installed very, very soon. It won't happen again. All right. Here we go. Let's talk about Steven Spielberg, Joaquin Phoenix, Star Trek, science fiction movies, and TV shows, and how they have influenced the many amazing tech products that we use today. So, Southern California is where Hollywood is, and Northern California is where Silicon Valley is. And Steven Spielberg and many others based in Southern California are dreampreneurs, hence Spielberg's company DreamWorks. And what I mean by that is Southern California and Hollywood in general, okay, they create amazing science fiction tech-based concepts or products that are in Northern California. So there's a movie that had a massive prophetic impact on design, technology design, and graphical user interfaces back in 2002 called Minority Report. Great movie, Steven Spielberg movie. And in Minority Report, remember they used swiping of certain gestures and whatnot, and that was kind of a precursor for AirPlay, so to speak, or sending information from your iPad or iPhone or Android handset to your television. Right? And there's a lot of other cool things in that movie Minority Report that influenced developers here, programmers in the Bay Area. Then the next movie that had a prophetic impact was more than a decade later, is a movie called Her, right, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, where the operating system of the future, which is now, is audio. You can't see, feel, or touch your operating system. It's everywhere, kind of like Alexa and SIRI. And so that had a big impact. And so what happens is Hollywood dreams up these concepts, and quite often Northern California and the rest of the world. So Star Trek started, it was on television back in the 60s, right? And it almost got canceled so many times, and it finally did get canceled. And so in order to keep expenses low, what they did in Star Trek was they didn't want to show the Enterprise landing on planets because it was expensive from a computer graphics perspective. And so their shortcut was they used a flip phone, and they said, beam me up. And eventually that flip phone became the Motorola Razr. Yeah. And Star Trek's also had a lot of impacts as well on how we should view the future. Like back in the late 60s, there was the first interracial kiss on television, which for some dumb reason was a big deal then. It's normal. And I remember actually, I was reading, and Star Trek was very, very accepting on many other issues as well, and very much advanced. And I was reading Obama's first book years ago. And in that book, I read that in 13 states in the 1960s, interracial marriage was illegal. What the hell is that? And so I called my mom. My mom lives up in Toronto. And I said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. I was reading Obama's book, and interracial marriage was legal in 13 states. And my mom was born in Canada. But your father and I used to walk down Yonge Street, which is the longest street in the world. It's in Toronto. We used to walk down Yonge Street in the 60s, holding hands. And people would come up to me and say, your father be ashamed of you. It's crazy, crazy. And I bring this up because what really breaks my heart is what happened in London, Ontario. Okay, there was a lot of racist events and murders and whatnot, and I'm sure you all heard about it. And I was born in London, Ontario, so this hits home, man. This hits home. And so I think that education fixes all problems in the world before they take place. And racism and stereotyping is due in part to a lack of education. And I applaud these dreampreneurs for envisioning a world in the future where racism is obliterated. And I humbly believe that affordable online and offline education can help to melt away prejudices. And I hope our dreampreneurs can continue to influence us to understand that we can live in a world without prejudice. And in my TEDx talk from years ago, I talked about how TEAT can solve all problems in the world. And TEA, or T, stands for Technology, Education, and Acceptance. And I think that if our space pioneers like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Sir Richard Branson follow through on taking us to the final frontier, that they will use their influence to beam free, unfiltered internet access to every millimeter on the planet. And it's my dream to humbly do my part as well. And so, I will be doing one of our weekly webcasts in Rwanda next month in July, where one of my amazing students, Vital, and I are building our first of many solar-based powered schools that will one day receive free, unfiltered internet access-based internet connectivity. And next year, actually, in 2022, we're building a similar school in Kenya with one of my students named Marin. She's one of my amazing students, all of whom inspire me so much. I want to talk about my mental health days off, okay? And I want to talk about my mental health days off work strategy. And I think if we are physically sick, of course, we don't go to work that day. And for me, when I used to work for other people at Goldman Sachs, Accenture, and in the venture capital and hedge fund industries, I would always take off at least one day a year when I was mentally not well. And there's no shame in admitting this. But we can all be mentally burnt out and drained as a result of overworking, which was my fault in hindsight. And if you don't do that, meaning if you don't skip work when you're mentally not feeling well, then you could really hurt your career. And I remember on more than to take better care of myself by taking my Ferris Bueller's days off, so to speak. And when you take these mental days off, you can kind of, I don't know, man, like get outside of yourself and see the forest from the trees, and reassess your path in life, which is healthy, of course. And my big turning points in my career have always come on days off like that. And it's hypocritical for me to talk about always taking one day off a week when I haven't always practiced what I preached. And taking that one mentally drained off day per year from work can change your life as you put your mental health first. And it reminds me of when I was watching National Geographic years ago. There was this gazelle being chased by a cheetah. And what they did was National Geographic, they monitored the heart rate of the cheetah. And when the cheetah was running away from the when the gazelle was running away from the cheetah, they monitored the gazelle. Of course, they noticed the heart rate increased a lot. And when the heart rate increased a lot, right, what happened was the gazelle won't be the cheetah, because we weren't meant to feel stress in our lives unless we were running for our lives, right? We take work a little bit too seriously. Don't be the gazelle, I should say. In closing, if you get a chance, I want you to read The Art of Happiness from the Dalai Lama. It's a great book. And what the Dalai Lama states in the book is that the problem with Western society, the problem is we sacrifice our health our entire lives in order to make money. And at the end of our lives, we sacrifice all of our money in order to maintain our health. And then we look back and we realized we never really lived to begin with. All right, let's talk about how to make money with stocks by paying close attention to investment catalysts. And Wayne Gretzky is one of my heroes. Okay, and he once said, you want to skate to where the puck is instead of skating to where the puck is. It's over. I'm so sorry. This has not been a good day for me, but I'm going to start this one all over again because it's important. All right, thank you. Thanks for your patience with me today. Yeah. Let's talk about how to make money with stocks by paying close attention to investment catalysts. So Wayne Gretzky is my hero. And he once said that the reason he was successful is not because he skated to where the puck is, but rather because he skated to where the puck is going to be. And so I love buying stocks I love buying broken stocks, but not broken companies. And I love buying companies where there is going to be a positive event, meaning a catalyst that's going to make investors want to buy the stock. And so when you see a broken stock, but not a broken company, and if you think there's an upcoming positive catalyst that's going to get investors excited, you need to back up the truck and buy the stock. And so one example of this was right after 9/11. I worked at Goldman Sachs, and stocks were in free fall. And there was a company, ticker TTWO, Take Two, and they make Grand Theft Auto. And the stock was being destroyed. And the reason was because at that point in time, they released a game around 9/11, right before 9/11, that had the Twin Towers in the background. And they took the game off the market and they changed it so you didn't see the Twin Towers in the background. But I bought the stock. I backed up the truck because I knew that there's going to be a catalyst every couple of years or so when a new GTA was coming out. So another bigger example of a catalyst is a massive event like the Olympics. Okay. Now, I remember in 2008, there was the Beijing Olympics. And between 2004 and 2008, a lot of us in the hedge fund industry did well, humbly, based on stocks that were going to benefit from the Olympics. And at that point in time, I remember I met with the CFO of Federal. I also met with the CFO of United Technologies, which owns the Otis elevator brand. And the CFO of United Technologies told me that in the next 5 years, more buildings are going to be built in China than the cumulative total of all buildings ever built in every country since the beginning of time. And so what China was doing is they were building up their economy to show the world, their coming out party, so to speak, for Beijing in 2008. And that was a wonderful long-term catalyst. Right? It worked out incredibly well. And that's one of the reasons why commodity prices ran up a lot. Okay, so the Olympics can always be in normal environments, maybe a little bit less so with Japan this year because of COVID. But the Olympics can usually be a great catalyst for stocks. The best kind of investments, though, are ones where there's multiple catalysts. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to talk about Lionsgate Films, ticker LGF. And I couldn't find a graphic for Lionsgate Films, so I was in Jerusalem, and the gate that you go through to enter Jerusalem is called the Lions Gate. And that's why it's called Lionsgate Films. But with Lionsgate Films, and I invested in them back in 2012. Okay, and Brian Carter, one of the investors I worked with in the hedge fund industry, he was awesome. This is his idea. He's a great guy. But Lionsgate Film, they were going to release 3 or 4 movies over the next couple of years based on the Hunger Games. And so that meant there were a number of positive catalysts when LGF ticker LGF, Lionsgate Films, released those movies. And so the bottom line is, you can do extraordinarily well if you buy stocks that are out of favor, where you know that there's at least one upcoming catalyst that will cause investors to buy the stock in the future. You always want to going to like, and not just stocks that people already like. All right, let's move on to Q&A now. And as you know, you can type your questions in YouTube there, and I answer the questions in the order in which I receive them. And give me 1 second. I'm just going to tidy up the ground here. And I've got... putting on my shoe. I have my foot in a box because what I do is I click through slides in a box so it's quiet with a towel on top. But put my shoe on now, my cheapest Yeezys. And I never sit in this room anymore because several months ago, my YouTube viewers were complaining, rightly so, and I love their feedback always. Were complaining that I sounded tired. So what I did was I got rid of my chair. There's no chair in my office. I don't sit down at all day long until the night. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So let me get to your questions. Again, I'm very, very sorry about the issues I had earlier today with the webcast. I'm getting fiber installed. Thank you all for your patience and for staying with me. All right. Let me go over here to your questions. All right. First of all, LKS wrote, "Hi, I found you yesterday." Thank you. I've been binge watching your videos since then. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. Thanks. Next up, Vishnu wrote, "Hello, Mr. Chris. Hey, hope you're safe and doing well. Likewise. I was wondering if you could tell us, can cryptocurrencies be treated as an asset? And what are the properties for something to be treated as an asset?" Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So an asset means something you have in your possession, even if you only own part of it. So if you own half of your house, you have that whole house as an asset on your personal balance sheet. And the other side of the balance sheet have done for years, is companies will sit on a lot of cash. And they don't want to just let cash sit in the account making low interest. So they'll buy treasuries or short-term investments, right? And what companies have been doing is, from a short-term investment or short-term asset perspective, they've been getting rid of treasuries and cash and buying cryptocurrencies instead. And a great example of this is MicroStrategy. MSTR is the ticker. And I know Saylor, the CEO, from years ago, investing in his company on the short side and long side sometimes. But what MicroStrategy has done is they've taken at least $1 billion and put it into Bitcoins. And I think he's buying more as well, or at least he implied he will. And that's one of the reasons why cryptocurrencies have gone up a lot in the past year, is because, cash is trash, and the U.S. government has printed 33% more of this stuff in the past year and a half. And because of that, a lot of big companies are starting to buy cryptocurrencies now. That's the delta, what has changed the past year. Yeah. All right, next up, I've got Shiv. Shiv wrote here, "Hey, Chris, I want to ask if companies in the future would use their own cryptocurrency to raise money rather than going for an IPO. Would it be possible?" It would, because the way that an ICO works, or initial coin offering or initial cryptocurrency offering, is it's like an IPO, right, to raise money. And what they do is they raise money by using the Ethereum platform. Okay, so I don't see why not. If you can create an ICO on Ethereum, you can certainly create an IPO as well. Yeah. Next up, Levy wrote, "Hey, Haroun, thanks for your dedication. My pleasure. I'm in the e-commerce industry. YouTube is the only gold rush in history where it costs you nothing to make the product. And YouTube is the only gold rush in history where you can get immediate access to billions of potential customers for free." And so I think the best marketing strategy for all of us is to leverage YouTube and other social media platforms and give. Help people, always. Give and you'll receive. It's prophetic. It's been true since the beginning of time. And you have to repurpose content as well, which is what I do. So on this weekly webcast, what I do is I repurpose some of the video content through video tweets, Instagram, as well as other YouTube videos and LinkedIn content as well. And if you want to know more about social media marketing, my dad told me when I was younger to only take advice from successful people. So that's what we'll do right now. There's this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, okay? Gary V. And Gary Vee is probably the best social media person on the planet. He's a bit abrasive, but you grow to love him because he's transparent and honest. So what you can do is just do a search on Gary Vee. Okay. And when you go to his website, if you scroll to the bottom, you can see all of the social media platforms he uses. He changes the order of these every now and then, right? And so the most important one is Instagram for him, then YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, which I can't figure out, LinkedIn, and then podcasts as well. Method used to be here as well. He ditched it, and so did I. It's a dying platform. So, and he also has something called 86 pages of insanity that you have to read. Here it is. Yeah. And it's called site. It used to be on his homepage. He's moved it around a bunch. But if you search for your find, oh, here it is here. Yeah. And so what you can do is you can scroll through and look at the content pyramid, which is what I use, right? This guy influenced me. He's smart. And so what he does is he creates content, right? Pillar content, like my YouTube content. And then he repurposes it, kind of like Nintendo does with its video games and has since the 80s, right? On a different platforms. There's method that he no longer supports. Yeah. All right. And I have a course called the Complete YouTube course as well. All right. Next up, Amarnath wrote, do we have electives in the MBA program? And then when will the MBA have discounts? Yeah, no, thanks for asking. Yeah. There are electives because you don't have to take all the content. So the way it works is there are 5 core topics that are covered: entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, communications, economics, management, and strategy, personal growth, and finance and accounting. And in order to pass and get the degree, there's 100 classes that are 3 hours each. And there are short quizzes after all 100 classes. And all you have to do is get over 50% on average on all the quizzes. So you don't even have to take all the content. It's a 30-day, 100% money-back guarantee. Yeah. All right. And very soon, I'm going to be giving away the MBA to one person on this call today. The $990 MBA. And I'm also going to discuss how you can all get my complete financial analyst training course for free today as a way for me to say sorry, that's how Canadians say it, about the internet issues I had earlier on today. And thanks for sticking with me. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Next up, Colin wrote, hi, Chris. Greetings to you, family, and staff. Thank you. Likewise, Colin. Great to see you, man. Damien, how are you? Damien is one of my MBA degree program students. He's based in Barcelona. And Damien wrote, big hug from Barcelona. I hope you're well. Likewise, brother. My question is, what are the most important factors in the valuation of a company? And then he wrote, thanks for teaching. My pleasure. Yeah. So there are various ways to value companies. You know, if it's profitable, you look at price earnings or discounted cash flow. If it's not profitable, you look at price to revenue initially. For me, I like price earnings. And the way I value companies, based on all my research, creating hundreds of models over the years, is I like to look at the pro forma income statement. Okay. And what that means is it's an income statement that companies release. They release 2 sets usually. The pro forma, meaning the stuff with cash only, and the non-pro forma, which is called GAAP, which includes depreciation and other non-cash items. I like to look at the pro forma income statement. I like to forecast it out at least 10 years and figure out what earnings are going to be in 10 years. And then I slap on a PE multiple based on that. Yes, I look also at the balance sheet if there's a lot of cash or debt. But what happens is the income statement's earnings from a pro forma perspective and cash flow, they converge over time. And I'm happy to discuss that in more detail if you want me to. Thanks. And I look at price earnings to growth a lot as well. Okay, next up we got Jack Sparrow who wrote, hey Chris, how do you think we can differentiate ourselves in this super competitive world? Yeah. Be different, be unique, be you. Like in the music industry, there's only one Jay-Z. There's only one Eminem. There's only one Adele. And there's only one you. And nobody ever makes it big in music or art for copying somebody else's style. Be unique, be transparent, be yourself, and just think differently. As Steve Jobs said, those who think they're crazy enough to change the world are often the ones that do. So just be different, be you, be unique, and follow your. If you chase money, and I get it, we all need money, especially early in a career to survive. But if you chase money, you lose your money in your dreams. But if you chase your dreams, as long as you're willing to fail at least a couple times, and please fail more than that. But if you chase your dreams, your dreams will come true and the money will follow accidentally. It always does. And all these incredible entrepreneurs that have made it big and put their dent in the universe never did it solely for the money. They did it because they're passionate about what they're doing. So follow your heart, find out what you're most passionate about, say screw the world, don't let anybody influence you what to do, and chase it with your heart. All right, next up, Jack wrote here, what industries do you think will see a boom in the near future but aren't as in demand right now? Yeah, so I talked about it in one of the sessions about you got to skate to where the puck is going to be. So I like to think of industries that have yet to be disrupted by technology. You know, what industries have not been Ubered, like the taxi industry was, or Airbnb, like the hotel industry was. Whatever market has yet to be disrupted, I would run after that. Yeah. Good morning, Andre. How are you? Andre wrote, the United States Department of Justice, DOJ, they seized $2.3 million in cryptocurrency paid to extortionists. And are our crypto wallets safe from hackers? And if the DOJ can seize crypto from hackers, could the hackers do the same to us? That's a great question. Yeah. So there's a concept of a hot wallet and a cold wallet. Okay. And a hot wallet is like your checking account. You don't have much money in it as you do in your savings account, but you use it to spend money. And so a hot wallet is like Coinbase, right? And it's called a hot wallet because it needs power, or has to be hot, to be on a wallet that doesn't have to always be connected to the internet. The ones that I personally use and have been using for years are the Trezor, as well as the Ledger Nano. Yeah, and I think those are very safe. I do. Yeah, yeah. All right. Next up, Andre wrote, is anyone using Slack for the MBA program? Yeah. So the way it works is I have Slack available for free, of course, for all of my MBA degree program students. The way to access it, to network with each other, is I added in the very first lesson of the MBA program how to access Slack. And if it doesn't work, please email support@harounventures.com. Thank you. Next up, we got Hari, who wrote, very good morning, Chris. Thank you. Chris, is it okay to take a break when shifting a career? Also, I feel like I'm wasting my time in my current career, so I have to fill my day. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't think there's any shame of that. What I'll say is if you start working at a company and you hate it, don't quit until the next calendar year. And I'll explain what that means and why. So if you start working at a company in November and you hate it, wait until January to quit. Don't quit in December. Because on your LinkedIn profile, it'll look like from year 1 to year 2 instead of just 1 year. Yeah, that's what I would say. There's nothing wrong with taking a bit of a sabbatical. I actually did it a couple of times. You know, when I left Goldman Sachs to go to the hedge fund industry, I took a little bit of time off, just a couple of weeks. And when I worked at Accenture back in 1997 in Toronto, I was so burned out. And I took a 3-week sabbatical. And I started a charity called Canadian Internet Charity Consulting, CICC.com, which I don't own that web address anymore. The biggest Chinese investment bank does. I should have held onto it, yeah. But I took time off doing that. And if anybody has like an entrepreneurial itch, like I did, and you're working for somebody else, and or at a big company, and you're like, gosh, if I start a company, I'm scared I might get caught. Well, start a charity. And if you get caught, great. Everyone will love you for it. And that will kind of help you understand entrepreneurship. And you're doing a good thing for the world as well. All right. All right, next up, Dante wrote, good morning, Chris. Good morning to you too. How do you avoid feeling stuck or burnt out when working on business and personal development? I want to improve every day, but there are times I feel like I'm not. Yeah. You got to take your breaks. And so for me, I try, and I'm a hypocrite because I'm not always successful because I love doing what I'm doing. But I try. I take Sunday off. 1 day a week makes sense because there's a reason God created the world in 7 days. Well, 6 days and he rests on the 7th. To kind of tell everybody, hey man, you got to take your breaks because burnout's been around and will continue to be around for the next million years or so. Take your breaks. And at nights, what I do is I always spend time with Christine and the boys, my kids. And I put Dylan to bed. I read him a story still. I hope my older kids don't let me do that anymore. Dylan's getting older, sad. I spend time with them because by the time your kid is 12 years old, you've already spent 90% of the time you'll ever spend with them. So I make time for them. I also make time for me, right? And I multitask a lot. So I'll use the elliptical trainer I've got in the garage, and I'll watch Netflix for a while. Every single day, I'll watch a bit of TV. Or my latest thing is I'm playing GTA 5 again, but this time modded out, right? And I do it every couple of days. That helps me. That's me time. Yeah. And if you find you're not getting enough stuff done each day, then what I want you to do is I want you to download my daily scheduler. And you can go to my website. It's harounventures.com/schedule, all lowercase, schedule. Okay. And because failing to plan is planning to fail. And for those of you in my MBA program, there's a more advanced version of that available for all of you. And plan each day the night before. And I promise you'll be more successful that way. Because if you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person. And when we all go on vacation or we take time off from work, gosh, we can't even find time to work out. Stay busy, but take your breaks too and schedule them. Yeah. All right, let me get some breakfast here. All right. Okay. Next up, Haroun wrote, "Hey, Chris, have you heard of CQF, a certificate in quantitative finance, and how useful do you think it is if you have it?" Yeah, I've never heard of it. I recommend if you want to get any sort of certification in finance, I would only look at the CFA, which stands for Certified Financial Analyst Designation. If you want more details on how to do it, let me know. I have a lot of hacks as well to save you money if you're going to get that designation. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. E Pronto, good morning. Just a suggestion for this webinar to cover more significant news of the week, like El Salvador recognizes Bitcoin as legal tender. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I'll show you how I go through the process of deciding what to talk about each week. Yeah. So, and I did not see that El Salvador news. So here's what I do. What I do is I go to Google News, okay? And when I'm at Google News, I look at just the business headlines over here over the past week, okay? And I go through economy, markets, jobs, personal finance, entrepreneurship, and I pick 7 topics that I think can be helpful for students. I've talked a lot about Bitcoin and Ethereum on past webcasts. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Next question is from Jack, who wrote, "What do I talk about in informational meetings if I have no major motive other than making the connection? I don't find an agenda for the meeting other than talking about common interests like Twitter. It might waste their valuable time with no major agenda for meeting ideas." Yeah. So what I would do is in the first 10 minutes of all meetings, a big rookie mistake is to jump into business. You talk about what you have in common, a love for sports or whatever it is. And as you mentioned, you can go to their Twitter profile to find out who they follow so you can chit chat about, non-business stuff. Then when you're at the meeting, I want you to add value and help them. Because if you give, you'll receive. It's prophetic. It's been true since the beginning of time. So how do you help them? Well, understand that in business, help them make more money or get promoted faster. And the way you can do this is you can provide them with write-ups. And in my complete job course, which I'm giving away for free today on my website, I provide you with a lot of templates that will help you do that as well. Every battle is won before it's been fought. Help them. Yeah. All right. Hey, Mark, how are you? Joseph is saying, how do you adjust your Excel exercises for the new version of Excel, namely the use of spill formulas and change how name ranges function in formula? Yeah. So we're constantly changing things. And for those of you not familiar with what happened, what Excel has done is for named ranges, when you drag across a lot of information, especially in financial statements, there's something called @spill, right? So it's a new function they kind of added. We are fixing that. Thank you, though. Yeah. All right. Next up, Mr. Nobody wrote, "Hey, Chris, do investors need to hold cash till a major market correction or recession, or should they start investing in dollar cost averaging strategy?" Yeah. So I would never go all in when the market's at an all-time high. I'm not buying any, which I talked about earlier today. But I also believe that, as Warren Buffett said, you want to spend what is left after saving instead of saving what is left after spending. As a result, I believe in having money, if you can do it, deducted from each paycheck. So it's out of sight, out of mind, and automatically put into your favorite stocks or ETFs. Yeah. It's so hard to call market peaks or troughs. You can't do it because the market will always stay irrational longer than we can stay solvent. But I do believe in dollar cost averaging as well. Yeah. And dividend reinvestment. Okay. And ePronto wrote, regarding El Salvador, and I did not see the news on that, the impacts of a sovereign country using other countries' currency as their own legal tender, like US dollar in El Salvador. Yeah, I didn't see the news about that, sorry. But I will look into that for next week. Yeah. Next up, Snoop. Snoop wrote, good morning, Chris. Mental health during COVID times with people working from home. I have more time for family, walking the dog, and eating better and cheaper. I'm 42. Is it due to maturity issues? So I'm not sure if I have more time with family, but it gets lonely. So like working from this dark room here, like I love to go to libraries or Starbucks and work from there as well. And things are starting to open up in America again, which is great. But you are right. One of the positives is you can spend a little bit more time with family and eat more healthy as well. And, a lot of companies are going to realize that you don't need to go back to work. You can work from home. And a lot of companies are realizing that. And that's why real estate prices in non-urban areas have been going up a lot. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me scroll through here. Thanks, everyone, for your patience with me this morning. All right. Hold on a second here. Okay. Next up, Harshit wrote, how can I earn more money? I'm 19. What can I do to earn more money? And then only I can invest. Yeah. So there are ways to start side hustles to help you save money. And one of the best side hustles right now is selling stuff on eBay, and I'll explain why it's different now. Because you can't get new products in a lot of industries. It's ridiculous. And so, for example, used cars the prices of used cars have gone up 10% month over month in the past month. And one of my employees, for your neighbors, your friends, your parents, yourself, whatever it is, and you can do it on consignment. And basically what that means is you can actually you basically give them you take 30% of what you sell. So if you do a search here for, I don't know, like an old iPod, and let me scroll down to what is sold. Okay, I don't want to look at what the bid and asks are because the last price is what sets a market. And so people have a lot of crap, sitting around their house. And you'll be amazed, right? This dude here is sold for $5,000 used. The same thing with a lot of stereo equipment, $500. Let's look at this piece of crap here, $300, etc. And old stereo equipment as well. And I've noticed that a lot with my old camera equipment. I'm starting to sell it now because it's worth more now than it was when I bought it. And the reason is because there's a massive supply issue globally when it comes to all products. We got massive inflation going on right now. You can't. It was hard to get chips for ages, which is why it's hard to find new cars because cars need chips, and there's a shortage of these things. So inflation is a massive problem here. And search for any topic. So search for side hustles up here, eBay or whatever it is, because I've answered over 10,000 questions live over the past couple of years. Yeah. All right. All right. Next up, David wrote, I'm working on a proposal for a publicly traded company. I hope for a job out of it. If all goes to plan, when does investing in the company transit from faith in my own ideas to insider trading? Ooh, yeah. And I'm glad you asked that because I talked a lot about insider trading earlier today. Yeah. So no matter what, don't invest in that company. Right? If you work at the firm or they're your client, put it on the restricted list. Yeah. Just trust me on that. Yeah. After you quit, and as long as you don't know any inside information, then you can consider investing. Yeah. All right. Okay. Next up, I've got Dia who's saying, Chris, how much should one invest in safe stocks, ETFs? Yeah. So I would say from a global perspective, you can always put money in your retirement savings account, a certain amount each year, and every government's a little bit different. And you can grow that money tax-free, which is amazing. So the first thing you should always focus on every year is maxing out that retirement account. In America, I think it's around $19,000 a year. And times are tough. It's tough for everybody to do it. In Canada, it's called the RRSP. In Australia, it's called the superannuation or something. Every country has it. So the first thing you want to do is you max out your retirement savings account. The second thing you want to do is if you have kids, you want to max out your kids' educational savings account as well. So that money can grow tax-free. In the United States, it's called a 529. In other countries, just do a search for what is the equivalent in country X of the 529. Yeah, you want to do that. Then what I would do is I would focus, if you can, on saving for a house before stocks or anything. Yeah, as much as you can, right? Or at least buy liquid stocks. Because the best investment you can make is a house or an apartment, right? And it's tough to save up enough for a down payment. You know, it took me until my 30s till I could do it in New York. But think about all the money that we're wasting over the years, you know, by renting. Yeah. So I would focus on that. Yeah. Okay. And I have a course called the Complete Personal Finance course as well that goes in a lot more detail. I hope it'll help you. I bought a lot of buildings and property up in recently in London, Ontario, where I was born, and I shake my head because I'm thinking about the awful racist events that occurred there in Canada, of all places. Yeah. Peyton, how are you? Peyton's one of my amazing MBA students. He wrote here, "You're the man, the best teacher mentor I've ever had. Need to get a one-on-one schedule pronto." Awesome. Great to see you, buddy. And so Peyton is in the United States Navy. He has his own company, which I'll publicly disclose when he lets me, which is going to be huge. All right. Next up, we got Rich. Rich wrote, "Hey, Chris, I want to learn about acquisitions and funding, successful ones and unsuccessful ones. Which one of your training courses should I take?" Yeah. Well, I don't want you to pay for it. I want to give it to you for free. And so the one I recommend looking at is the Complete Financial Analyst Training and Investing course, which I'm going to give to all of you free later on today as a way to say I'm sorry for the internet issues I had earlier today. Yeah. And actually, let me do that right now before I forget. So give me 1 second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick video as I go and get the coupon and tell you how to all access it. Okay, so memento coupon to give to all of you to take my Complete Financial Analyst course for free. So again, this is a quick video on the MBA degree program I have, specifically the finance and accounting portion of it. I'll be right back. Thanks. All right, so the way to get the coupon for free for my financial analyst training and investing course is you're going to go to, I'll show you from scratch here. I just made the coupon now. New incognito window, here we go. So go to learn.harounventures.com, okay? And when you're here at learn.harounventures.com, you're going to click right here on Complete Financial Analyst Training and Investing Course. And here's the coupon that you're going to enter, right? So you click Enroll in Course. And then for the coupon, what you can do is you put this in right here, okay? It's free Chris. Free me, please. So FREE_Chris, all caps, okay? And that will work just for today. And you click Apply, and you'll get it for free. And thanks everybody for your patience with me earlier today with internet connectivity. It will not happen again. Thanks. What are your thoughts on large successful multinational companies offering its employees out of the blue a convert part of compensation to company stock at a 15% discount? What's the catch? Is the company in trouble? Yeah. So the first thing I would do, and let me explain what a convert is quickly. So a convert basically means you give somebody a loan, and then in 6 months or a year or so, that loan will convert into ownership of that company, shares in the company, usually at a 20% discount, not 15, 20% discount to whatever the value of the company is at that point in time. Yeah. So I would, I don't know, man. I would read through the investment offering memorandum and never invest in anything ever, please, without reading the investment offering. So with an IPO, you'd read the S1 document. With any other investment, if you don't get an investment offering memorandum, a legal document, don't invest. Now, when you do get that investment offering memorandum, if you're going to invest a sizable amount, then I want you to have a lawyer read it. You can go to LegalZoom.com. I'm not sponsored by anybody, nor will I ever be. But you can go to LegalZoom.com and hire a lawyer that way, pretty cheap actually, right? So I would do that. Or read it yourself thoroughly, especially the risks. Yeah. But usually when there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah, that is very uncommon for that. Yeah, convert. Yeah, I'd be careful of that. Yeah. All right. Hey, Greg. All right, next up we got Arjun, who wrote, "Hey, Chris, hope you're well. Likewise. As retail participation in the stock market is increasing and making a significant impact, what do you think of this trend in the future?" Yeah. So, as I was talking about earlier today, with insider information and stock market manipulation, I do worry about a lot of retail investors because, and I say with love in my heart, but you're never taught the rules about insider trading. Like nobody teaches you that stuff or market manipulation, and yet you can get in trouble for it. So be careful, and nothing bad has happened yet, but I do worry about some of my students. Be careful when you use Reddit, and I love Reddit. Those are my heroes. But be careful that you don't write anything that's going to manipulate a stock. Because I think what's going to happen is the FBI and the SEC are going to go after retail investors at some point. I'd rather they go after the big, criminal billionaire hedge funds. Not all of them are criminals, you know what I mean? But just be careful, yeah. And whenever the market does extraordinarily well, you get a brand new crop of investors. And I've seen this game before. It happened in the late 90s as well. Unfortunately, at this point in time, I've never in my life seen a bubble in so many different markets. Real estate, stocks, commodities, cryptocurrencies, NFT, positive reaction to stocks. And the reason is because the government's printing a lot of this stuff. And because interest rates are basically zero, cash is trash, people are saying, well, I'm not going to keep my money in the bank. I'm going to invest in stocks instead. Well, what's going to happen is because of inflation, which is a massive issue right now, it's pretty scary, the government's going to have to raise interest rates. And when they do, what will happen is people will start putting their money back in the bank to make interest, right? And so if you go back to the early 1980s, you had a Federal Reserve chairperson, God bless him, passed away, named Paul Volcker. And what Volcker did was, because of inflation, he raised interest rates close to 20%. And so the market sucked in the early 80s because everybody kept their money, in the bank to make that interest. I don't think it's going to be as egregious or extreme as it was in the early 80s. But I think it would be fiscally irresponsible for me to advise that rates are not going up. They are going up. And the way to monitor rates is you can always go to the government's yield curve. So the way you go there, and I'll explain this really quick. You go to treasury.gov. Okay, so you go to treasury.gov, and this will tell you what interest rates are at, okay, and what the market expects them to be at as well. And the market can always stay irrational longer than we can stay solvent. But what you want to do is you want to monitor the yield curve here to see how it's progressing. And if you, my God, look at that, broker and refinance, because rates will never be this low again. Yeah. But you can always monitor the yield curve to see where rates are trending. Now, one of the reasons why governments, especially the U.S. government, has kept rates artificially low for the past year is obviously because of COVID. Now, the U.S. is recovering, but there's pressure from other markets all over the world, other countries, for the U.S. not to raise rates too fast yet, I think. Yeah. And so rates are artificially low until we all sort of get through this COVID issue, and then they're going to spike again. Yeah. Okay. And then PM wrote, money is a tool that can be potentially misused, kind of like a shovel. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Reminds me of a scene from the movie Goodfellas. Yeah. All right, cool. Next up, CV wrote, do you want your MBA course to get accredited? If so, what is lacking to get it? Yeah. So I've been torn with this. I've looked into it. I don't think I'll do it ever. I'll never say never, but what happens is when you get something accredited, there's a standard body that tells you what you can and can't teach. And I think the problem with a lot of business schools is they're forced to teach irrelevant crap. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Okay. LKS wrote, I love your bottle. Can you tell me where I can buy one? Yeah, sure, man. Yeah. So I don't take any sponsorships, as you all know, which has hurt the growth of my YouTube channel. I don't give a damn because I always want to put my students first, always, and not companies. But you can go to Amazon, do a search for Bottled Joy. And basically, it tells you how much water you're supposed to drink throughout the day at certain times. I'm way behind schedule today. Yeah. All right. Next question is from E. Pronto, who wrote, I'm confused with the news. That makes two of us. A public company launches marketed public offering of common shares. The stock immediately nosedive 8%. Does it mean the firm issued more stock, potentially diluting the stock? Yeah. No. So, yeah. So, no, it's all supply and demand. And what sets the price of any asset or stock or anything is what the last purchase price was, right? So it's all up to the market. If somebody believes that a stock should not be valued at $10, should be valued at $8, if a lot of people believe that, then the stock will be, valued at $8. It's just what happened. It's the efficiency of the market. Yeah. And if I didn't answer the question correctly, please let me know. Yeah. But in terms of dilution, if somebody creates new shares to sell to the public, then what will happen is the price earnings. Okay. Kunal, good morning to you too as well. Okay. Next up, Fred. Hey, Fred, how are you? Fred's one of my MBA students. Great guy. He lives in Baltimore. He works in the healthcare industry. Yeah. And Fred wrote, can you explain short squeeze? Absolutely. Yeah. So when you buy a stock, it's called a long, right? Like in football, you're going long. When you do the opposite of that, it's called a short. Okay, and so basically, and this is for those that aren't familiar with shorts, you're betting the stock is going to go down. Now, what happens is a lot of times trades get crowded, right? The hedge fund mafia, they work together like a pack of hounds. And if too many people are short a stock and the stock doesn't go down on bad news, then what happens is the hedge funds panic and they get out of that short. Okay, and that leads to a short squeeze, which squeezes the price up. Now, the way it works is you never want to short stocks that have too many people short that stock. How do you quantify that? Well, you look at what's called the short interest ratio. The short interest ratio is the number of shares that are short divided by the average daily volume of a stock. So if a stock trades 10 shares every day on average, and if there's 100 days worth of short interest, then 100 shares short divided by 10 means it will take 10 days of short covering until all the shorts are gone. And it's a good metric to look at because if you short a stock that is the shorts, right, that the hedge funds they're betting against the stock, they panic and they buy back the stock to cover their short position. It's called a short squeeze. Yeah. All right, next up we got Cuban Media, who wrote, "Hey Chris, do you think that Dropbox will be definitely acquired by the end of the year?" I don't know, but I'm pretty confident. I would think that Elliott Management is shopping the company right now. Yeah. And they've got a great track record, Elliott. And I've invested alongside them in CompuWare, ticker CPWR, which got acquired, and Novell, ticker NOVL, which eventually got acquired as well. Yeah. They're good at what they do. Yeah. And they're so good. They have like over $8 billion in assets, but they don't actually take any new money, right? They've been closed for a couple of years. And what I love about Elliott Management is they're based in Florida and instead of New York. And when you're in New York and you go to these idea dinners with other hedge funds and stuff, you become a victim of groupthink, right? A lot of other smart investors influence you in terms of what to buy and sell. But if you're in Florida, right, there's a bunch of great. Yeah. It's founded in 1977. Yeah. All right. Next up, Naman wrote, "Hi, Chris. I wanted to know about Alphabet Company. Also, is it part of Google? It's kind of like a holding company, so to speak. And I think that the management of Google is so smart that they know they're going to get broken up by the government soon. They've known this for years. And so Google they're too powerful. I mean, they own the two biggest search engines in the world, Google, of course, and YouTube. And so I think rebranding as Alphabet as kind of a holding company is setting themselves up to be broken up. Now, I think one of the reasons why Google has not been broken up by the Department of Justice in the United States is because they're a great corporate citizen, relatively speaking. In 2011 in January, Google pulled out of China because Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders, Sergey Brin grew up in communist Russia, and he hates, and I love him for this, he hates when somebody tries to block freedom of speech. Right. And so from a geopolitical perspective, the U.S. government is probably a big fan of Google. Yeah. And from a privacy issues. But I think if the DOJ is not going to split up Google, then the EU will try to do that. Kind of like what the EU did with Microsoft by offering Windows without Internet Explorer back in 1999. Yeah. All right. Okay. And Lachelle wrote, "Chris, I love your corny jokes. Keep them coming. Thank you." Lachelle, I appreciate that. First time seeing you on the call. I hope you join us again. And again, thank you everybody for your patience with me today. Yeah. But I'm still having fun. And you wrote, I love the desktop. I have no words. Thank you. Okay. Somebody said, "This is a video?" And then the answer was, nope, he's live. I am live always. I make a lot of mistakes live. Yeah. Next question is, what is a hedge? Yeah. So let me talk about it from a backyard perspective first, because this will make more sense. So a hedge is basically, when you have a hedge around whatever it is, a hedge can have a brick wall as part of it. And that's what a hedge fund is. A hedge fund, their first priority is protect capital. Second priority is make money. And so they help protect capital. How do they do it? And what is a hedge in general? Well, a hedge is a way of protecting you from losing money. Okay, and so hedge funds will have longs, meaning they'll buy stocks, and they'll have shorts, meaning the opposite, right? And they'll protect themselves. And when I worked in the hedge fund industry at one of the larger funds I worked at, we ran market neutral, which means we were not allowed to be more than 10% net long or net short stocks at any point in time. And so whenever I created trades in my big portfolio, I would always have hedged ones. So if I was long Salesforce, ticker CRM, I'd be short SAP, ticker SAP, that sort of thing, right? So they're pair trades, you're hedged. And in the options industry, which I'll talk about in my complete options course coming out later this year, you have what are called straddles, right? And I've used these a lot when I used to manage money. And what a straddle is it protects you for a certain amount of time if the stock goes up or down a lot. So sometimes in my career, I would own a lot in a certain stock. And for certain, what I would do is I would construct what's called a straddle. Okay. And a straddle basically means I own a bunch of calls and a bunch of puts. Okay. And it protects me. So if the stock goes up a lot or down a lot in a small period of time, I don't lose any money. Okay. Except for the amount I paid for this portfolio protection, so to speak. Yeah. Okay. And then Nacho wrote how would J.P. Morgan make money then? Yeah, and so you were I think you were referring to when I was doing the case study, the case study earlier with the farmer and with J.P. Morgan. So J.P. Morgan would make money on that futures contract, right? By fees, right? By fees. Yeah. So that's how a lot of these trading floors at places like Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, or doesn't exist anymore. B of A bought them, but the way they make money a lot of times is through commissions on these trades. Yeah. There's always someone on the other end of a trade. Okay. Next up, CV wrote, what is your view on adding a clearing broker into the game of an OTC or over-the-counter derivative, while AAA rated financial institutions are required to pledge 100% variation margin from a counterparty risk perspective? Wow. Yeah. Well, I don't know how to answer that question. I've never really thought about it that way when I've traded derivatives in the past. What I've used is I had two in my hedge fund. And your trading floor, what they'll do is you'll buy and sell stocks or short stocks or put on options positions by using a prime broker. Okay, and I've used Goldman Sachs before. Big firms like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Lehman Brothers, even years ago, they have their own prime brokerage departments. And what they do is in prime brokerage, they take care of lending, stock loan, to their clients, the buy side, like big hedge funds. And they also help out with settlement. So I used to use Goldman Sachs execution and clearing for my hedge fund for settlement. And they take care of all the clearing stuff behind the scenes. And the CBOE, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CME, also take care of that as well. It all happens behind the scenes, yeah. Even when it comes to stock certificates, we don't have them physically anymore. You know, it's companies like Mellon that take care of that from a custodial service perspective, yeah. All right. And Mark wrote, hello, brother. Are you teaching options in the last quarter? Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. So Mark is one of my amazing MBA degree program students. I will be teaching it in class number 89. And so I'm adding a lot of new content every single year to the MBA program. It goes into much more detail than any of my individual courses as well. Yeah. Anurag, how are you? Greetings to you as well. What level of expertise could the students expect to gain on different... you don't have to take the entire program. It's like choose your own adventure. Just watch the topics that are of most interest to you. I'm always adding more advanced topics to the program as well. A lot of it is optional. Think of them as electives. And the program will always be up to date. If a new social media platform is created that helps people in their business, then I'll add that to the platform as well. I will. I'll make sure it's always the most up-to-date MBA degree program. I'm confident it will be. I have a 30-day, 100% money-back guarantee, and my reputation's on the line with it. Yeah. You'll love it. Or your money back. Or just take the whole thing in the first 30 days and get your money back. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. David wrote here, get your Abe Froman on, the Sausage King of Chicago. I love that. That's from Ferris Bueller's Days Off. Yeah. And I watched that with my kids, actually. And that movie, along with Back to the Future, are the only 80s movies that they'll sit through with me. Yeah. Yeah. What a great movie that was, man. All right. Next up, Lachelle wrote, love your energy, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for doing these weekly live broadcasts. My pleasure. I can't believe it's week number 140. I can't believe it. It's unbelievable. It's getting better. And I've got these new lights coming in as well for the back, professional lights. And our goal is, and we're always pushing the goalpost out, to humbly try to make the look and feel of this better than CNBC by the end of the summer. Yeah. Clearly, I make a lot of mistakes, though. Okay. Next up, Andre wrote, how can I help you with your educational program in Kenya and in Rwanda? Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate that. So I need to, first of all, understand the whole process better. And so I'm going to Rwanda I'm bringing my son too. It'll be fun to meet with Vital, and who's one of my MBA graduates from last year, to build out our first school in Magoo. And I'll be doing this weekly webcast from Rwanda in a hotel in July. And I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I always do. And once I learn from these mistakes, what I'll do is I'll teach my students how they can also create schools. So thank you for offering. There is donations. I feel bad even talking about it. We have a website, which I haven't really publicized. It's projectmagoo.org. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next question is, can people that have financial aid do investing? Yeah. I mean, yeah. I like anybody that has a mortgage is kind of, in a way, leveraging themselves, right? But, and it's crazy to pay back your mortgage if rates are this low. I recommend levering up a bit to be able to invest as well. Yeah. But when it comes to financial aid, I'd be careful. Make sure you make your minimum payments as well. Because the worst thing can happen is you're late with one payment or two payments. Is along my other house as well, as I was waiting for it to close. And I couldn't get a mortgage. And I was freaking out. And so I called, and the mortgage company said, your credit is just not good enough. And I was like, I'm along two houses. What am I going to do? This is cray-cray. And what I did was I called, and you can do this too. You can call the credit agency and find out why your credit sucks. And so for me, what happened was, it was because I went to a clothing store called Nordstrom, and I was at checkout years ago, and they said, "Hey man, we got this credit card for you, and we'll give you $200 off if you sign up today." I was like, "Oh hell's yeah!" So I signed up, and then I paid back one payment like a day or two late, and so I went to Nordstrom and I got down on my knees. And I begged the manager to do something about it, and they finally fixed it on my credit report, and I was fine. But when it comes to leverage, just be really, really careful. Make sure that you make all your minimum payments. Otherwise, your credit rating will get shot. Yeah. And my wife is much better at credit than I am. Yeah. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, next question I've got is from David. And I still have to give away the MBA degree program to somebody. My hair's looking kind of reddish. Those are all the questions that you have. So what I want you to do is please just save your questions and then ask me again next week, because I do this call every week starting at 8 a.m., including one I'll do in July from Rwanda. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next question is from David, who wrote, can you recommend an individual or agency who might review a business proposal and perhaps facilitate contact with the Canadian CEO whom it is targeted? That's a specific question. Okay, let me think about this. So, it's tough because there are a lot of consulting firms out there that can help you. You know, the consulting industry is very fragmented. There's over 100,000 consulting firms in the United States in general. But when it comes to meeting with a CEO, or anybody for that matter at that company in Canada, for example, you know, what I always recommend is networking aggressively. And I have a book, which I don't talk about as much anymore because I got complaints that I was talking about too much work and get meetings with people, etc. It's over 200 pages and a couple hours of YouTube videos. I've used it. I promise you it works. And also today, I gave you all my course for free, the Complete Job course, right? So just go to Complete Job and take this course, because I do talk about networking in it as well. Yeah. And I'll probably have that sale on, the free offer on for a little bit longer, but not forever. Yeah. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Now, since the call is almost done, I have to ask you all a question. And the way that you answer this question will determine if you win the $999 MBA program, mine for free. And the way it works is whoever answers the question first wins. Okay, if I see 5 answers at the same time in the same minute, whoever's name comes up first in the chat wins. Okay, now I got to think of the question. Okay. Okay, here it is. And it's always based on something I taught in the class. What is the market called? What is the market called, right, that includes options, swaps, calls, puts, future. Let's see. Yes, Raj wins. Oh no, LKS wins, came first. But I feel bad, Raj, because I mentioned your name, so you win as well. So it's called derivatives. You are right. You are right. Yeah. So here's how it's going to work. LKS said it first, and Raj, I'm going to give it to you too, because I said your name as well. So LKS and Raj, what you can both do is email me at support@harounventures.com. And I will give you both a coupon for my $999 MBA degree program. Okay, yeah. So again, just LKS and Raj. Yeah, cool, fun. All right. I got time for maybe one more question here. Yeah. What is the ideal way to begin a business? Should you have a lot of talented people? Yeah. So I would say that, first of all, write a thorough business plan. And I have a business plan course you can take. You can go to learn.harounventures.com. Or I have a much more thorough venture capital boot camp as part of my, that's my message to end the call, sorry. I have a venture capital boot camp as part of my MBA degree program, which you can also check out at learn.harounventures.com. So failing to plan is plan to fail. Write a thorough business plan first, and always understand that the jockey is more important than the horse. And sophisticated investors, they know they'd always rather invest in a company with an A management team with a B business model instead of investing in a company with a B management team and an A business model. Earlier on today, it will not happen again. If you want to check out my my MBA degree program and my courses, you can always go to learn.harounventures.com. All my courses are here, as well as my bundle. I have there's 9 courses for $50. I have a subscription program as well for $99 a month, which is only pennies per hour of content, and my MBA degree program as well is here. All my courses have a 100% money back guarantee, no questions asked. I want to see you all join my MBA degree program as well. It's a lot of fun. So if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'll see you mañana, meaning tomorrow, and every day, because my vlogs drop at 9 a.m. my time every single day. If not, God bless you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Thursday and every Thursday forever, starting at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that that's too much. Try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important. And however you learn that, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways.